later. I thought it was working.
Yeah.
The way the process will work is the resolution will be read by the city staff. Then the city staff will make their comments. Then the planning commissioners will address any questions or concerns to the city staff. After that, we'll ask if an applicant is present and would like to present any information to the planning commission. The applicant would come forward to the podium, state their name and address, and then present the information they'd like to share. After which time the planning commissioners will ask any questions or have a discussion with the applicant. After that, we'll open it to anyone present who would want to speak for or against the resolution. Again, come forward, be recognized. Come forward to the podium, state your name and your address. Present your information. The planning commissioners may have questions. At this time, given the size of the audience, we'll limit any open comments to 5 minutes. After that, the planning commissioners will discuss the resolution, then there'll be a motion, a second, we'll vote, and the resolution will be either pass or fail. At this time, if there are no objections from anyone in attendance to the meeting procedures that I just discussed, would everyone present please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in? Let it be known that all persons present to provide testimony at this Tuesday, May 9th, 2023 meeting of the Planning Commission hereby swear or affirm said testimony will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth. All those in agreement, please say I do. All those opposed, please say opposed. Thank you. Please, you may be seated. This time, could you do the roll call?
Gary Koenig,
Present.
Shannon Brandon,
Here.
Brad Bupp,
Here.
Eddie Harvey,
Here.
Joe Wilson.
Here.
We have a quorum to conduct this meeting. At this time, we'll review the meeting minutes from April 11th, 2023. Are there any additions, deletions, edits, or recommendations in regards to those meeting minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of April 11th, 2023?
I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes of April 11th, 2023. All in favor of approving the minutes indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The meeting minutes of April 11th, 2023 are passed. There is no old business. Moving on to new business.
Excuse me. Old business, we still have an item on the table.
Okay, what is it?
Are you,
325 North Main Street, the item we tabled from the last meeting.
the applicant is still choosing colors at this point in time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments? We'll have to review that old business when the applicant is ready. Moving on to new business, resolution number PC 16-23.
A resolution requesting a special use authorization for an essential service building at parcel N44-093860 along Sunset Drive in the B General Business District. We are in between right now our old code and our new code. So some of the zoning categories, the names are changing. Not much of substance has really changed about the commercial districts in the more suburban arranged areas of town like this one. So this is going from B General Business to neighborhood mixed use, it's basically the same as far as the permitted uses and how things would work. So it doesn't really matter so much if the applicant were to apply under the old code or the new code. The standards would be roughly the same. What is kind of won by going with a new code is there's more, and the applicant agreed that this would probably be helpful for them too. There's more substance on how a landscaping screen would be done between the residential to the east and their property. There's a little bit less of a setback, which I appreciate as a planner, because what we're trying to do with this proposal, which is for a fiber building, it's actually in two parts. There is a utility cabinet. There's a picture of that in the addendum that I stuck right on the flat part of the table. And then there is, in step 2, they'd like to install the cabinet now, and then if they roll out the full fiber connectivity for the city, build the building, which also is pictured in right after the staff report. There are some images, actually it'd be after their site plan. There's some images of what the building could look like. Again, it's going to be behind some landscape screening, and the neighbors to the east, they all have privacy fences existing. To coordinate with that, I wouldn't require them to build another wall. It would really just focus on the actual landscape screening between the residents and their building. But what this does is connect fiber cables to a network throughout the city, and what they're doing is preparing for that for a future build out. I think the city just went through a whole lot with MetroNet, and there's no immediate, as far as I understand it, immediate plan to start rolling out this system. That might be a couple of years out. But the applicants, Alta Fiber, found this property to be very suitable for them. It's got access to 2 different right-of-ways, Peters Drive and then Sunset. What is something I think that is notable and what staff would like to see is any infrastructure not taking up that whole nice lot that could become something else, something more customer-facing. So originally, you'll see in the Planning Commission packet, here I should kind of keep up with the game over here for people. This is where we're talking about. What you'll see in the Planning Commission packet was the initial site plan, which included a driveway out to Sunset. That's something that as a planner, I didn't really want to see. I wanted to see them consume even less land if possible, and the way you do that is coordinate with the neighbor. So they've reached out to the neighbor to the south. Tom Baker owns that property and renovated it recently. It hosts a chiropractor and I think a doctor's office, and there's a perfectly good parking lot and driveway already there. So what you see on your desk is an amended site plan, which takes out that driveway access and instead uses the Baker's access. They're working on an access easement right now. So they're negotiating that, but what that does is eliminate the need for, consuming the land to the west. So now you can get as much land as possible reserved for a future user rather than just a utility box, which is probably not the highest and best that we could think of to be along that corridor. As much as possible, they're going to be tucked back into the corner. So what we've kind of settled on is let's be 15 feet away from the property line. That's what the new code would ask for, and do a really nice, robust landscape screen between the residences and the building or the utility box, whichever it is. I received one comment from the public. I only responded just before this meeting, so I'm not sure if they received it or not, but they had asked questions about, will this generate any noise? What's being proposed for the rest of the land? Questions along those lines. As far as I understand it, the box itself or the building don't generate noise, but there will be a generator, and the generator needs to be operated once or twice a month, just for 20 minutes at a time, just to make sure that it's functional. Other than that, it's really just a utility function. With that, I recommend approval of the request.
Any comments from the staff? For the staff from the commissioners?
I have a question about screening as far as on the Sunset side.
Yeah.
For the initial boxes, is there going to be any kind of screening? So when you're driving down Sunset, you don't necessarily look over and see these two big metal boxes?
That's a good question. So, two things. One, I predict that there'll be something built in the long term in front of it. But in the meantime, what our new code calls for is this row of screening trees, because you're transitioning between two types of districts, residential over here and commercial over there. So that's generated as a need upon development. And then also there is a landscaping requirement in addition to that requires screening of parking and facility and kind of structures like this. So there will be a couple of trees at least that will be required. And it seems like the company is on the same page that they would like this to look nice, so.
So it's not necessarily going to look like the picture of the boxes that we got? that are
What
just
they have
kinda
on there,
out there?
so one, it's gonna be as far back into the lot as possible, so if, just for those utility boxes, they won't really be visible, but when the building comes, that's when that landscaping,
So
tree
until,
planting,
but there's no guarantee that the building is coming, if I understood correctly, right?
right.
So,
As far as I understand, their business model, yeah,
but the boxes are going to be coming,
correct.
correct?
Yeah,
So there's no requirement to screen just the boxes until the building comes?
not unless the planning commission would recommend, so,
Okay.
which I don't think is a lot to ask, really. I think they'd be amenable to it.
I think that would be reasonable to,
Yeah.
I mean, throw a few bushes
Sure, yep.
in front of it.
And I think the applicants are present as well.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
Got some questions for the applicant.
Is the applicant present? Yeah, please come up.
Hello, Houston. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Joe Locker. I'm with Alta Fiber. I'm responsible for our network real estate. I'm coming here before you to request the special use that's required for telecommunications facilities. Just a couple of things to confirm. Yes, this would be a phased build out. It would be cabinets initially, and then a building. It is success based. So as we build once we build a sufficient subscriber base, then we would look at converting to a building. And we are certainly amenable to any kind of landscaping from we want to be a good neighbor, and working with Kirsten, we're certainly we have targeted this property just because it's on Sunset Boulevard. It's a major thoroughfare. It gets right to where we anticipate our fiber routes would be. But other than the building, we really have no need for the land or the additional land. And so yes, we would definitely be looking to subdivide that. And to your question on screening, we've been if you're not aware, Alta Fiber is formerly known as Cincinnati Bell. So we've 150 years in Cincinnati. We were acquired and are growing north. And so over the next few years, we will be coming north towards Piqua and into Piqua and the surrounding areas. So I can't give you a better projection because I don't know what all our timing is on the build, but we're kind of out ahead of the curve, identifying properties and securing those. And I am aware of that MetroNet is here, maybe some of the issues that communities have with those. We have a very different approach, and I hope that you would avoid much of the troubles or frustrations that you may experience with them. And as far as the parking, yes, we worked with Tom Baker. He has agreed in principle to the fact of an easement, but we haven't gotten further than that. So our outside counsel is working through drafting an easement agreement, and so he's definitely open to it, and we're definitely open to working together to minimize the to minimize another curb cut and to allow for frontage for other development. And then to the point on the generator, yes, we exercise the generator once a month for 20 minutes. That's during the day. We do in other applications or other instances, we have about 80 of these facilities across Cincinnati. We don't have major complaints about the noise or anything like that. They're fairly unobtrusive, and we do if there are complaints, we're pretty quick to add additional screening or sound protection in the form of fencing or something around the generator. So I don't anticipate that being a problem. Obviously, if there is a power outage, the generator would run until power is restored. But we also find that people typically they like to have their high-speed internet even when the power's out, and they don't. They put up with the noise for that time period. And as far as traffic to the site, once construction is done, we expect maybe 1 to 3 visits by a technician per week. So there's not a ton of traffic to this, and the cabinets are really to provide the cabinets that we install. They're about 5 feet tall. They're short enough that I can see over them. Those don't require much in terms of visits, and those will be primarily for residential and small business use. So just a high-speed line. The building houses more sophisticated electronics, so that for business applications and things like that. And so that's what once we've got some subscriber base and some revenue coming in, then we can justify the further investment for the business equipment. What questions can I answer for you?
Is that generator a natural gas powered generator?
Typically we use diesel, but we can do whatever. I'm trying to think. I'm off the top of my head, I can't say we have a natural gas generator in our fleet today, but we're not opposed.
I think that would be preferred in our case.
Mhm.
Just from spillage and stink and everything else, the natural gas seems to be better for you too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know the decimal level when that is running?
I don't. I'd be glad to provide that for you. Provide the model number. I want to say. Well, I won't speak. I don't know. I can find that out. It's a Cummins diesel generator. Usually we do about 80 watt.
80 watts?
Yeah.
It's pretty small.
Yeah.
And that might be even less with natural gas than it is with diesel.
Reason I'm asking, you're very close to residents right behind you, and they're here actually, and I want to be sure that you're not going to blow them out of the living room when you run that. And will the generators be outside the box or inside the box? I assume they'll be outside.
It will be outside the box.
Okay.
Yeah. And while there are the cabinet, when they're just the cabinets, there is no generator. It's only when there's the building that there's a generator. And for the residences that are in the audience, we will not blow them out.
Okay. Except you don't know what the noise is.
I don't know. I don't know the exact number, but they're not significant.
Okay.
That's pretty small.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
I
can
know
assume.
that this week at work, we actually tested our natural gas generator, and it's about as loud as a large snow blower,
Yeah, they're not
whatever that
terrible.
equals to in decibels.
Right.
It's not crazy, it's louder than a lawnmower, but it's not hateful.
Yeah.
Okay. But like you said, if it is a loud number, typically over 90 is where you get hearing loss.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume you'll be below that.
Yeah, the number I was going to say was 80, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly.
And more importantly, what it is at the neighbor right behind you is my primary concern, because they're going to be living there.
Mhm.
And to approve this, we want to be sure that they're okay with that noise level, even though we don't know what it is. But you're saying that you would be open to lowering that if it is above a certain level, which we don't know yet. That's what I'm trying to get at, which
Yes.
I can't do that.
But yes, you know, I would say we're a staple in the Cincinnati community, and that's because we're a good neighbor. And yes, whenever there have been complaints, we have worked to address those.
So you own the entire lot? The
Yes.
whole lot?
Well, and I should be clear, yes, we have not closed on the purchase yet. So this is a little bit of a chicken and egg in that, we're trying to get the special use approved before we close on the property so that we don't buy a property we can't use.
Yeah, I understand what the city said, but about the access, I reluctant to recommend moving forward without the access easement. That would be permanent access across another person's property, and you're gonna be driving, your plan was diesel trucks and construction equipment and all this other stuff.
Well, that's, so
Temporary, yeah.
during construction.
You'll just use your whole lot.
Yeah, I'm sure we would pull on the lot, but.
You'll stay out of that.
But once we're operational, it would be, you're talking a pickup truck or a Chevy Express van, something like that would
And-
be going through the parking lot.
The access easement, you're gonna go across their parking lot. So you're gonna incur some expense to maintain their parking lot,
Yes,
that kind of thing.
yes.
I would amend this to say pending approval, the special use, pending approval of the easement. That's,
You can make that as a condition.
I'm gonna, I have two conditions so far. I've got this
I've got
one,
3.
the screening requirement.
There's the cross-access easement, screening, and the generator be natural gas.
Easement, and the generator is natural gas. Is there, well, all in Piqua, it's natural gas lines, so there should be available. Natural gas. So, are there any other concerns of any of the commissioners? My only concern is that access easement. I can't see giving you a special use and you not having it. Of course, you could just go back to your original plan, which was just using more of your property for access.
Right.
But anyway,
I'd like, can we clarify that? So you would like, you want to see the access agreement executed, correct? And then if not, is the concern reverting back to the old plan would not work, or?
no, it will
would
work.
Okay,
The old plan will work.
okay.
But, so we'll amend it to say the easement is approved to both parties, both of the parties, the party that owns it, and that would be, a permanent easement essentially, because he may sell the property.
Right.
You would still have the easement, so that your attorneys need to work that out.
So how does this go as a motion? To approve resolution P, and this, I'm not.
No, we
I'm
would-
not making a motion, I'm just saying.
No, what we would do is, one of the commissioners would say,
Right,
we would amend, we would first vote on the amendment, and then we would vote on the resolution.
right, but you don't really have to do the amendment. You can do it, you can make a motion with conditions.
I'm tracking the conditions that you guys are discussing.
Okay,
unless
so
there's
we will
something
make them,
opposed to
we
them.
will make, so are there any other questions for Mr. Locke? Thank you very much for coming and investing in our community, and we're trying to be helpful, and it's really
I
wonderful.
feel that,
and
I
we're-
do.
But we also have to,
Yes.
we have citizens, and we have to hear from our citizens, and
Absolutely.
we're zoning, and we're big fans of zoning.
Yes, but my only question is that if, in the wording of this amended proposal, if we aren't able to come to an agreement on the easement, and I'm not sure what what role that the city from a zoning and commissions, from a planning and zoning standpoint, plays in the granting of that easement. But
We
if we're
will
not able to
not-
come to agreement,
We will not interfere with that owner's, whether or not he chooses to enter into the easement or chooses not to. It would then be incumbent on you as the discussion to revert to something similar to your whole plan, or there may be a development and, you put a service road to the back, or something like that. I mean, there would be, the special use is
Still have to come
contingent on the
back, right?
easement or access.
But I believe if we, whether we amend it or do it with conditions, he would have to come back to planning commission with, if he doesn't get the cross-access easement, he would have to come back to planning commission for that, because we're putting it as part of the motion.
I mean, it really just depends on how you want, what it is you want ultimately. So if, so the way I look at the land, it's prime real estate. There's only so much you want to give up to infrastructure, which should probably be hidden in the back. So as much as possible, we really do, it's not an ideal use, in my opinion, of this whole lot to be taken up by this kind of infrastructure. Okay, so let's back it up to the corner. So we did that. It seems like the adjacent owner is amenable to the access easement. So that's Plan A. We'd really like to see that. So I don't want to say that we're equally okay with both ways of getting into the property, because I think we'd really want to see them just share a driveway. And if not, then it's sort of up to the planning commission. Do you prefer that it not get built at all because they don't have that easement, or would you prefer to see, okay, no, we'd like to make sure that they're able to use this land and go forward? Because if they don't have that kind of reassurance now, they won't purchase the property and move ahead.
Well, I think they're going to purchase that whole property. If they don't get the easement, their default would be to come back to the planning commission for they could assure they're getting, well, we have to hear from citizens, but the special use. But after, they could come back to the planning commission. But if they own all that property, I could see that whole site having a completely different plan that would allow them access to that. I mean, there's the development, and not even have to rely, this could be like, there could be just like temporary access until it's further developed
But
or
what
something.
she's saying is the city is not looking at this as an ideal development for this lot. They want to keep, they don't want to make another curb cut.
Right.
So if they don't get the easement, it's not necessarily the best use of the property to have the driveway. And so that's what she's saying is, it would have to come back before planning commission, and then we would have to hear that, whether the city, feels that this is a good use to put a curb cut
Now,
and drive.
you may disagree. The thing is, it's up to you all. If you may
Right,
disagree
right.
with that and give me permission to go both ways with it, and I can administer either plan without having to come
But
back.
she's
I'd
saying,
rather go with both ways, really.
There's already a curb there.
What?
There's already a ramp there.
yeah.
there's what?
There's already a ramp right there in the area. So if they have to use it, would be one there.
I think we should go both ways,
It's either
because
way,
there,
it's gonna
there
work.
was a curb cut when it was a medical building prior.
Correct.
So it's no real different than what it was before, and we don't want to make them have to come back unless it's really absolutely necessary. We-
And yeah, I
They're
agree.
gonna do the primary way that you want to do, and if that doesn't work, then you'll figure out a different way.
And it
Yeah,
might-
and you could actually, like I said, in the further development, come up with a totally different solution
Yeah.
on your property
Yes.
that it meets all those needs.
Yes, and I anticipate that we'll be able to to obtain the easement, and it's in our interest too. I don't have to pay the
Right.
development cost to put the driveway in. I can, it's,
Yeah, that's right.
there's, it's to our benefit as well. But yes, to your point, if we don't come to that.
And you may have vacate it later
Right.
because of a total plan or something.
Oh, we may vacate the easement?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. I doubt that we will vacate the land or or the building because,
You're going to
we
be
have
tied to the
ones that are 80
infrastructure.
years old in Cincinnati, so, we're there to stay.
Okay.
But yes,
So-
to your point, we would have the development. We could have the development to allow access if we don't have the easement.
Okay, very good. Any other questions of the applicant? Hearing none? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good luck. I hope it all comes together. It's wonderful. Anyone present who would like to speak for or against resolution number PC 16-23?
Good evening, Planning Commission. Tom Homan, 1803 Nicklin Avenue. I would like to generally speak in favor of this. I currently have Metronet and would love to invite some competition and lower my prices a bit. During my day job, I do a lot of IT project management. It sounded like during this there was some issue as to the generator regarding the noise and the fuel type. The wattage that is required for that is a pretty important number. There may be some level of wattage that natural gas just simply can't support. The applicant stated twice that the wattage needed was 80 watts.
Yeah.
For comparison, my cell phone charges at 65 watts. My work laptop is 260 watts. My gaming laptop is 1,000 watts.
My
I would-
generator's 5,000 watts.
I would ask the planning commission to please invite the applicant back up and re-ask him and give him a chance to clarify the wattage.
It appears he doesn't know what it is.
Okay.
Yes, it's kilowatts. I have no
Oh, okay.
no offhand.
Yeah, my only concern is I would definitely think that natural gas would be a much better option, but if the need is too high, it might be too much for natural gas to support. And so it would be important to know what that number is probably.
Seeing what the load is on those buildings, it's going to be a small generator, I think.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
There's Steve Frazier, 102 Janet Drive. Thanks, Joe, for the shield, or the shrubs and bringing up my questions first. But the access to Mr., who's the gentleman known? Baker, Mr. Baker.
Baker, yeah.
Where is that actually going to be? I mean, you got the whole driveway coming down right into my backyard. My backyard runs into that driveway, his parking lot. Where exactly is that going to be?
Oh, I'll show you.
15 feet off the
Can you
property line.
pull the thing up there? Well, do you have this?
This
There
is
you go.
the driveway.
There we go, that's a good picture.
Yeah, that's it right there. See the driveway right there with the, that's it. She's showing it
Okay,
right to
but
you.
where will you be entering into his property?
Right there where it is right now, the little hand.
Okay,
So they would just enter in, and it would basically be completely joined to that.
Okay.
So then it would cross the property line, and they'd be on their property.
okay. So it'd be right there where she just had the finger. right
About
there.
15 feet
Okay.
from your fence.
Okay, and not my fence, it's.
Well, the fence
The
there.
generator is going to be blowing most of the noise towards Sunset and to the north.
Okay. Now, will there be shrubs
Yes,
on Tom's side?
that's what's shown on the plan.
On
Tom,
Tom's
I don't
side?
know Tom.
Baker, he's the
Mr.
one
Baker.
that owns the
Mr. Baker.
driveway. That
Will
they're
there
going to
be
be sharing.
shrubs there, or do I have to sit there and look at that building?
Yeah. He owns a building to the south. Tom Baker does.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's who you're
They're
getting.
not shown on the plan.
Yeah. He has a medical building
Which
there.
property is yours, sir? This one?
Go back to your. Right behind.
Yeah. Okay, so you're down there.
Yeah,
Okay.
right there where the fence
Gotcha.
comes to.
You're not where that red, orange fence is, you're even further to the south,
Right at the fence.
right at that orange fence.
Yep.
Um,
You're 102 right there?
Yes, there, right
Yeah,
there's
so
102.
it's right.
I'm just thinking it through. I
Yep,
think so what we were thinking is we would need to, because there's power lines here, we were thinking, these trees are gonna need to be, some kind of dwarf variety, crab apples or magnolias or Japanese maple, something like that. And so far, I think they've given us a schematic and we've just lined up trees this direction. There's no reason why we couldn't make sure one comes in at sort of a corner and,
Right.
and then
Okay.
you have a total screen.
okay.
Well, couldn't you also use shrubs? I mean,
You
does it
could,
have
yeah.
to be trees? I mean,
It's good that you're here because I just hadn't really thought of this not having a privacy fence here, and this is all I was thinking of. So I was thinking shrubs didn't make a whole lot of sense lined up against a bush or lined up against a fence where you wouldn't see them. But maybe they do make sense because you'd be able to see
Okay.
lower than that. Yeah.
And you said the cabinet starts out with a cabinet, and there's gonna be a building if the use is big. How big is this building?
Well,
14 feet by 36 feet.
See, now we're starting to get,
Looks like
Okay.
it'll look like this, so it's not much taller
it'll
than
be
the
over
door
top
itself.
of the fences and things like that, okay. Next last question. In the past, when something goes on like this in our neighborhood, there's been people go around and get petitions signed for or against. Are they required to do that to find out what the citizens are? Okay. Okay, so they're not required to,
well, the citizens were within, was it 200 feet or of the property? Is it 200 feet?
Yeah, so I
think it's,
I
there's
like to try to include these if I can, so that people can just visualize how far out that is. So
Yeah.
200 feet from this property, all of the neighbors are noticed. It's not a crazy far distance. I mean,
okay.
but it does give everybody adjacent a chance to respond to it.
That's the notice requirement that we have in the ordinance, that notice they're doing right there. And
Okay.
that was done for this public meeting.
You got a notice, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, so did
everyone
they.
within that distance
Okay.
would have received a notice, so they would be aware.
yeah, because I went around for Mr. Baker to get petition to sign so he could move forward. He wasn't gonna move forward unless the neighborhood was happy with that,
Right.
so.
That's a good idea for if they want, but there's no
No
requirement to do that.
requirements. Okay,
I think I'm trying to think, there is something, when we vacate streets or alleys, you have to do that exercise, and I can't think of any other, it may be that he needed to vacate some public piece of right-of-way.
like CVS pharmacy,
Okay.
and they wanted the pharmacy license taken away.
Oh,
It was zoned as a pharmacy.
gotcha.
what a chiropractor is, it was Crosby
That's
Drugs at one
probably
time.
something outside of
Before my
our
time.
normal processes to
So,
have to gather petitions.
And do we, you guys as commission, do we know what the future of the rest of the lot is?
He just said he has
Yeah.
he plans to develop it,
Because
obviously.
okay, the
And the
response.
city is very interested in a kind of an intense development,
Right.
okay? But there's
One thing that I
there's no,
read in your response to me was apartments.
I haven't heard that.
There's nothing definite.
I know nothing's definite.
And whatever would go in there would be, again, brought to the public unless it's within, various things. So there's no real known
There's a list
right
of
now.
things that can go without a special use. That's
Okay.
one that would need a
Right.
special use.
Yeah.
So you could have, just like continue that retail strip and offices without, and that would just be a zoning permit through us. But if it were apartments, yes, it would come back here.
Okay, thank you.
And you might want to talk amongst yourselves, so if you do have any issues, you've got a contact
Right,
if it goes forward.
okay, I
Business
appreciate it,
cards,
thank you.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Anybody else want to speak for or against resolution number PC 16-23? Further discussion? Hearing none, do I have,
Just a minute. Did you get any written or any kind of response from any other neighbors that were contacted besides Steve?
I got one phone call from the neighbor across the street. Once he figured out what the notice was for, that was kind
Okay,
of the end
I
of it.
just want to know if there was anything else, so, okay.
If I may.
Yes.
In the spirit of the whole truth and nothing but the truth, it was said about that we would develop the remaining property. It is not our intent to develop the remaining property. We would subdivide and sell that, and then the development is open to whoever acquires the property. We're not property managers, we're not developers. It's our intent to get our building there, get our operation up and running, and then sell the.
Market it.
Yes, yeah,
Excellent.
so.
Great idea.
Thanks.
Thanks for the clarification. Do I have a motion on resolution number PC 16-23?
I'd make a motion to approve Resolution PC 16-23 with the following condition: that the cabinets be screened with landscaping.
Do you want to say, like, what side, what direction? I mean, it doesn't need to be, I mean, you know, like.
Okay,
You know
south,
what I mean?
south side, well,
From Sunset is what I think you said.
I originally said Sunset, but I also, Mr. Fox is also saying the south side because then, you know, it's not in view.
So that would be west and south then?
We'll make
Right.
it, we'll
Yeah.
pretty much surround it.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay.
And the easement?
Well, if I put a condition on the easement, if he doesn't get the easement, then he has to come back before planning commission to do the original plan. If we don't put a condition on the easement, he can do either or.
Okay. And, okay, any further discussion? Do I have a second?
I think we ought to add the generator be natural gas if possible.
Okay, so we have a,
And to have the generator be natural gas if feasible power-wise.
right, okay. So we have a motion and do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second on resolution number PC 16-23. The Planning Commission has studied the request, conducted a public hearing on the matter, and has established findings that indicate the proposed special use will be compatible with the intended use of the real property, will not threaten the general health, safety, and welfare of the surrounding properties, and the adjacent property values will not be negatively affected, is compatible with the general economic development policies of the city, and conforms to all other applicable plans, policies, and regulations of the city. This time, could you poll the commissioners?
Gary Koenig,
Aye.
Shannon Brandon,
Aye.
Brad Bupp,
Aye.
Eddie Harvey,
Aye.
Joe Wilson.
All right.
Resolution number PC 16-23 is approved. Now we'll move to resolution number 17-23.
A resolution requesting a recommendation for replat of in-lot 9241 and in-lot 9242 to combine into one .64 acre lot with dedication of utility easements and right-of-way. This is along Looney Road. There was a single-family residence already constructed here. The applicant had entered, this has been through a lot of public processes, and you may be familiar with it already. The applicant first entered into an annexation agreement because they were in Spring Creek Township. They wanted city utilities. They received a variance from Miami County to start building. They got the annexation agreement in place so that they could hook up their utilities, and then they've had so many steps since then. So they've had completing the annexation, which takes quite a lot of effort when you're in Spring Creek, and I believe that there's no existing annexation agreement between Spring Creek Township and the city, so there's some negotiating that happens there. There's a lot of waiting periods, and the state requires that your annexation plat be separate from any plat to dedicate right-of-way, which means they had to come back again. So what they're doing is combining these two lots, and when we, which they needed to do anyway. And when we get to that point where we're replatting, we always ask, please give us the right-of-way as a full dedication rather than keeping it under a highway easement so that we can, or right-of-way easement, whatever the case may be here. What that does is take the land out of their property. It's no longer taxed. That's good. That's the one benefit for them, that they're, the lot looks a little more legally like it actually does on the ground. And in this case, we just needed to vacate some utility easements in the center of those two lots and move them back to the exterior of the property. I recommend approval of the request.
Any questions from the commissioners? I do not see the applicant. Is the applicant present? I don't see Mr. Burkhardt. Anyone present wants to speak for or against resolution number PC 17-23? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve PC 17-23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number PC 17-23. The Planning Commission has studied the request, conducted a public hearing on the matter, and has established as fact that the proposed final plat will conform with the stated intent of the Complete Streets policy, will not threaten the general health, safety, and welfare of the properties affected, is compatible with the general economic development policies of the city, and conforms to all other applicable plans, policies, codes, and regulations of the city. This time, could you poll the commissioners?
Gary Koenig,
Aye.
Shannon Brandon,
Aye.
Brad Bupp,
Aye.
Eddie Harvey,
Aye.
Joe Wilson.
Aye.
Resolution number PC 17-23 is approved. Now let's move on to resolution number PC 18-23.
A resolution to recommend a name for the Great Miami River Trail Bridge. At this time, the bridge, maybe I can pull up just on the map. We have a bike pedestrian bridge going, connecting on the Great Miami River Trail. Currently there is the older bridge. I actually don't know if that has a name. South of the power plant, and it's an older, I think it carried steam across the river at one point in time. It's not super stable. I mean, it's okay enough, but it's not ADA compliant, and it's really in need of some significant maintenance. This is the current bridge that people use. You would walk, I believe there's a ramp on this side as you're coming from the west, but on the east side, when you get there, there's stairs, and then there's a railing that you slide your bike tires into to get down. So that side of it's certainly not ADA compliant, and it's extremely narrow, so you have to walk your bike across. Last year, this city commission voted to approve and fund a new bridge, which is going just south of here, and you can see the construction now. It's very far progressed. It's coming right into Goodrich Giles Park, and the benefit of this is it's skipping all this wastewater treatment plant stuff. The utilities departments would prefer people are not back there if possible, so you're going to come from the south and then cross the river here and then continue. The bike path is getting reconnected up here, and we'll just come past the power plant, which is really nice because we do have a lot of potential for redevelopment of this power plant. So it puts bikes and pedestrians on the right side of the river at the right time. So what we have here tonight is a proposal for a name for this new bridge. The project has just been called, sort of generically the Great Miami River Trail Bridge, which is a mouthful, and it doesn't really tell you where on the Great Miami River Trail this bridge is for anybody who's using it. First, we had the Diversity Committee propose that the bridge be named the Goodrich Giles Bridge. I think there's been some discussion since then. I don't think that that's the only name that was discussed with the Diversity Committee, and since then we've had Jim Hemmert, who is in Bike Piqua, and he's just a general bike enthusiast in the community. I think he spoke with Mr. Oda and Gary. You also proposed a name as well, which was an agreement, which was the Atomic City Bridge. So we have those two names before you tonight for discussion. Now what do I do? Should I talk about the history of Mr. Goodrich Giles? I can also turn it over to the diversity committee applicant who's here, or would you like me to play the video?
Well, I read in your notes, there was a thing called James Hemmert. Is he here?
No.
He submitted a name proposal, Bridge 23.
Oh, that's right.
Did they withdraw that?
Yes, he
That
did.
is withdrawn.
They moved on to the Atomic City Bridge as being a better fit. And I think the reaction to having a number as the name is it gets confusing because there's route numbers with,
Yeah, I don't know what that meant. Okay.
Yeah.
So right now on the table, it's Goodrich Giles Bridge and Atomic City Bridge.
correct.
Okay.
I think we need to have the diversity committee up here to address this because there's been a change, I believe, again. So,
Again? Okay.
yes, I believe. Jim, anyone here to speak?
Is there anyone here to speak on a change on the name for the bridge from the diversity committee?
And maybe what I should say too is that as far as this naming process goes, what is happening is names are being floated and submitted, and what happens next, what we do is we take it to the correct bodies. In this case, since something is originated from the diversity committee, it wouldn't go back to them necessarily unless they ask for that further discussion. It goes to the planning commission for a full hearing and discussion, and then you will make a recommendation. You can recommend both names. I think we appropriately will send both names on just so that everybody knows what's been proposed. You can recommend one name over another, but ultimately the city commission is going to choose and adopt and designate the bridge.
Yeah, and so for this, at this point, I was a little confused by the resolution, because this is not going to the city commission. It has to go back to like the park board. Isn't this going to be maintained by the park board? And if we go with the Atomic City Bridge as a potential naming, it would probably have to go back to the Energy Board for a recommendation?
I don't know that that's the way we pictured it, that the name would affect which boards it ends up with, but I do think that the Parks Board, seeing it, is a really good recommendation.
So Park Board so what we're doing here is just saying, here's some names, and here's the background for that, and then this is not going from here as a recommendation to the city commission at this point. Is that correct?
So ideally, in an ideal situation where we have a lot more time, what we would really want to see is a request for names. The city manager puts out a request for names. That way, it's not just, hey, the diversity committee submitted, and so everybody else is saying, oh, it's time to name the bridge. Here's my idea, and then we don't know exactly how to shuffle those things together because we have one formal submission. Okay, here comes another one. And there's not a lot of time because not every board meets every month. The Parks Board only meets quarterly. So that could, am I wrong? Is it monthly now?
Every other month.
Every other month, okay.
So I guess what we could do here is we could make a recommendation to the city commission.
Yeah.
But we don't have to down select to just one. We could say,
Correct. And
here's two.
and they can also invite the Parks Board members to their next
review it.
meeting
Okay.
to discuss as well.
Why don't I just say it will, as a planning commission, we will down select either one or two, because there's only two right now. And we have had a public notice on 3 names and one's been withdrawn.
Correct.
Okay. Is that correct?
Sort of. I don't know that I don't know how public the Atomic City proposal was. You know what I mean? I know that in the planning commission packet, the Bridge 23.
It was in the,
was there.
yeah, okay.
So there's public discussion. In this case, I don't take that and notice the wastewater treatment plant and so it doesn't go out that way, but people get it on their public alerts.
Okay.
I think in this case, as things are kind of just getting started with the naming, it's possible that going, everybody gets together in the city commission chambers and talks about this, and then that's how it proceeds forward, because they'll be adopting it ultimately anyway.
So are we approving a resolution to the city commission?
You're making a recommendation to the city
Recommendation,
commission.
okay, very good.
Just a second.
Yeah.
So we have two names
Correct.
presented to us, both of which have historical value. I mean, I wouldn't want to throw either one of them out. I don't know how the board feels, but I think they're
No.
both, I don't think we need to belabor this at all. I think we present these two as very valuable options to the city commission and let them determine this, and it
Fine.
doesn't, what are we
Any-
gonna say? No, this one sucks,
Yeah, I
and this
think
one
that's
doesn't?
totally a good idea, but I also think it's good for those who are submitting the name proposal to give an introduction to the name and have, it's an a first opportunity for discussion.
Make
on
a
it.
short introduction.
I mean,
Okay.
we've got the histories, and we should, all of us should know those, actually, but we've got.
I don't
these.
know, does everyone know about the Atomic City Bridge, the background?
Yeah.
But I feel different.
Okay.
Because of our rich history, we only came up with 2 names of everything in the whole city.
Oh, for
So
just
far.
just
So
this
far, but I
bridge,
mean,
there's a lot of bridges,
I think we
there's a
should
lot of
open it up
things.
to the public to let them vote on something. Because I feel it's just, we're coming up with 2 names for a bridge. And I don't
Okay.
see the point, because I don't see a point naming the bridge after a park. Cities don't do it no more. Go look at the Franklin Reserve. What's that bridge they named down there by 75? Has nothing to do with the park. It's named after somebody in this county-wise, but
Well, we
We need-
did the city,
more about history of our Piqua we should be adding or finding and looking into. I mean, we could put Chris Lee in there. He was the first mayor of Piqua, African-American. I mean, am I correct, Mr. Hamilton? See?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, there's
well,
history. I mean,
okay, but
there's all
did
kinds
the
of-
city commission approve the city facility honorary naming policy?
Yes.
They did end up approving that.
So there's nothing in there about a large effort to, it really down selects to, groups can propose names, and it doesn't have to go out to
I
everybody
think
in
the
the.
bridge ain't gonna be done anytime soon, so we got plenty of time.
And then it
come up
has
with
to
a
go
name.
to a representative committee, which these names have, and then it just goes to the commission, they approve it.
Yeah,
We
but I
don't need
think
to
there's need to
have a
be-
long
But-
process.
But we're not approving or
No,
disapproving.
we're just making a recommendation to the city commission.
And with only 2 names, they both have merit,
Yeah,
so we
Yes.
pass them on, and if there's more names that come up, we'll
That's up
look
to
at those
them.
the same way.
So
okay.
you mentioned, a time frame. Is there a time crunch for this to get a name on this bridge?
What we are anticipating is that the bridge is going to be completed in October, possibly September. So the lead time requested is for signage, so that we would be able to get a sign made and make sure that there's no delays. There may be a little bit of wiggle room there, maybe a month, but not so much longer than that.
So I'm hearing what Eddie is saying here. Is this something that we could put on the website for maybe 2 weeks? For here's the bridge. This is where it's at. This is what it's going to do. Do we have any recommendations for naming? You go through in that 2 weeks. You take out ones that don't meet the requirements that were just approved.
I
And then
think
it-
yes, quite possibly.
And then
That's a
it
good.
comes
And-
before us
And I
as a
would say these
recommendation.
2 have been submitted already.
Exactly.
and
Sure.
they've been on websites. On these particular two, I think it follows the city facility honorary
But
naming
I
policy.
understand what Eddie is saying is, open it up to the public. It's
It
the
is.
public's,
That's what this did.
I understand that, Gary. What I'm saying, open this request to name the bridge to the public and say, do you have any suggestions for naming the bridge? If so, submit your name. And then it gets whittled down. The ones that don't meet our naming requirements are left out. You have the list of what's left. And then, give the public the opportunity to name the things in the city as long as it meets our naming requirements. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think 2 weeks would be reasonable. I mean, to still be able to meet, meeting the sign requirements.
So really, it's coming before the planning commission at all, just for the reason of, do any of these not meet the city's naming rules?
It came before the planning commission because the diversity committee formally submitted something, which got the ball rolling on, well, we have to respond to this application to name the bridge, which is admittedly a flaw in the design of, well, if one person submits, and then that is the trigger for everybody having to start talking about, except that it's not the only trigger. The other part is that we will need to meet the bridge with a dedication ceremony, and we want to have the signage completed. So those things are our,
I'm just trying to define what
framing the
we're really
time.
trying to do here.
yeah.
Other than,
I really recommend that some conversation with the members of the diversity committee who submitted the first names, and I'd like to hear what the change might be, and I'd like to just hear their perspective in general on the discussion, personally. Before I guess mix in, we'll open up to the Facebook kind of a poll or something like that. So some of those things are not in my direct control. I just have to communicate that to the city manager, and then move on from there.
Okay, this was approved, we approved this, it doesn't talk about this additional step.
I understand it doesn't do that.
So we're
All I'm
not
saying,
following our process.
We are a representative board of the public. So let's say we're building another bridge, and I'm the only one who decides, hey, I think there should be a name for this bridge, and I throw out a name out there, as long as it meets those requirements, but nobody else knew in the public that, hey, they're gonna be naming this bridge. They just thought it was gonna be a bridge. I'm just saying, what is the harm in allowing the public to have a voice in naming the bridge?
Okay, so what we can do at this point is just table the resolution. Is that what we're talking about?
I'm okay with that, but I, like Kirsten, would like to hear from the diversity committee since they're already here.
Why would we table it?
Well, we have to.
Does this
as I-
close the nominations for, if we say these two applicants are approved based on, the city.
agree with
the
you,
city's
yeah.
naming, that doesn't mean we have to table it.
No,
We
it just
send
goes
these forward, and if
and
there's
then
more
people-
names that come up from a public,
Absolutely.
then they come too, and we see, okay, this one has merit according to the bylaws, this one doesn't.
And it's gonna be, before the city commission gets it, it's gonna
So
be a couple weeks.
I don't see a reason to table
Table it.
anything, because
Just
that
move it on.
doesn't do anything.
Okay.
This way, it gets into people's psyches a little quicker,
Okay,
and, but yeah, I don't mind hearing from everybody.
let's hear it.
Amended
Okay, what would be amended to say
to the more public input.
2 weeks on a website?
Yeah.
Okay, we can amend it.
I want to name it the Butt Bridge. Can I put that in there?
You actually, if you read the honoring the policy, it can be done.
I doubt it.
There-
The only amendment we're doing is to add 2 weeks of notice to the public before it goes to the city commission. Is that what we're saying?
I don't even know if we have to even say that. If you're gonna bring it up that was our suggestion, then I don't know if it has to be part of the resolution necessarily.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is, again, it's an advisory recommendation, so
Okay.
there's only so much we can do to make stipulations on it. It's more of we need to go back and have a discussion really quick and see what the
Okay,
pros and cons are.
okay, any other comments? Do we want to hear
I
from the?
would like to hear from the diversity committee.
Yeah,
Okay.
they had a meeting today, and they were talking about whether they wanted to change their recommendation or not,
So they
because,
want to call it the Butt Bridge now.
no,
Okay, so, okay, then, let's hear from the diversity committee. I don't know, is anyone present here? from the
anybody
diversity-
here that
Or,
wants to
or,
speak?
or whoever wants to speak. It doesn't
Right.
have to be.
Well. Well, I'll open it then to the public. There's no one here
Yeah.
from the diversity committee. This is open for public comment.
Yeah.
What?
Jim.
Please come, if you would like to speak, please come forward. It's your option.
Please do. Thank you.
State your name and address, and please share. I know who you are, but for the record.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jim Oda, 523 Cowell. I chair the Diversity Committee for the City of Piqua, appointed by the City Commission. We did have a meeting today. The general consensus was that the Giles Bridge from the Giles Park was a little redundant. That we instead go with the Atomic City Bridge because the atomic plant will soon be gone. There's no question about that. There's no decision about that. Federal government's going to take it down. That's it. It's gone. And it's a big part of our community. And so the bridge is replacing the bridge that did handle the steam from the atomic power plant to our municipal power plant. And that the Atomic City Bridge would be appropriate to commemorate that part of our history. We are commemorating Goodrich Giles, which I supported and wrote the plaque. It is a promotion of African American history. But the Giles Park and the Giles Bridge, we felt was a little redundant. Nothing against Mr. Giles, but this is an opportunity. There are other opportunities for Mr. Giles. There are no more opportunities for a bridge for the atomic power plant. So I would heartily recommend that you look at the Atomic City Bridge as something that commemorates something that's important to us. Something that's going to be nothing, a grass lot. And unless you lay there for a long time, you won't glow or anything.
Can we fairly say, Mr. Oda, then that the other name is kind of withdrawn?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, so we don't
At the
even need
meeting
to consider
today.
that.
at the meeting today.
Yep.
It was,
Awesome.
I think it's awesome, yeah, and you get they're gonna completely construct the Giles Park the way it was.
yes.
And it's, yeah, I think that's.
And I may recommend that we move the Giles Historic Marker maybe a little closer to the bridge. Now you go in the parking lot, it's over here. You don't necessarily go and look at it. But if you put it, kind of at an angle by the bridge, then it's going to get a lot more what is the Giles Park. And on the other side, there's going to be the plaque that says, this is the atomic power plant. What an opportunity on both sides of the bridge to talk about our history, to talk about our heritage. So, any questions that I can
No.
answer?
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
I had the Atomic City Bridge, first municipally owned nuclear power plant in the country. It had a unique it was a demonstration project that was funded by the federal government, had an organic coolant, which hasn't ever been done. I mean, there's so many features about this project. It's exciting. It's exciting. It needs to be commemorated, in my view, as an engineer. Yes, sir.
Tom Homan, 1803 Nicklin Avenue. I'd like to voice my support for the Atomic City Bridge. I think it sounds very cool. It is a extremely unique and very interesting, just from a historic perspective in science and technology, that our city was the first. I also, just because we're naming it one thing doesn't mean that the other name wasn't important. And I definitely support the idea of a future project that the Giles Park monument be shifted to a more visible location and maybe spruced up a little bit. I'm very excited about this new bridge. I'm sad that we are currently not connected to the Greater Miami Bike Trail Network. And so it's exciting to have this new bridge, and it'll be exciting to have this name for the bridge as well.
Thanks,
you.
sir.
Thanks.
Anybody else want to speak for or against?
Good evening, members. My name is Larry Hamilton. I live at 1104 Maplewood Drive, and I'm a retired Black history teacher at Piqua High School. Now, I make mention of that from several perspectives. One is because my efforts were integral to the creation of the original Piqua Diversity Committee. Secondly, I make mention of that from the standpoint that the Goodrich Giles Park was something that I also was very much involved with in connection with initiating that phase of necessity for the development of an inclusive historical heritage in Piqua. So that's something else that needs to be addressed. But importantly, I think we ought to try to be accommodating to one another and to the citizens of the city of Piqua. And that's what I'm advocating here today. I had developed what is called ownership identity. I don't know if it's, I coined the term or what, but I've been using that term since about 2005, okay? Haven't heard that many other people reference ownership identity, but it's a term that was used as a means to promote exactly what Eddie Harvey and Shannon Brandon were advocating. It's an opportunity for the community to be involved in naming city-owned properties, whether it be a bridge, a street, or, a park, whatever. There ought to be a great deal more emphasis on giving people input into the naming of property that they have some ownership level of interest in. It only makes sense to advertise and promote that option on the part of citizens within the city of Piqua and every other city as far as that is concerned. But it's important for us to acknowledge the fact that we haven't been inclusive in the past. And if we intend to be inclusive, we want to make sure that people have an opportunity to say so in terms of what it is that they value about the historical past. Now, I have advocated that we go with this solution. I'm simply saying the Goodrich Giles and Atomic City Bridge. When you go to that site, you're entering the Goodrich Giles Park. You can't get to the bridge without crossing into the area that encompasses the Goodrich Giles Park. By the way, the Ohio Historical Connection marker has not only Goodrich Giles being referenced, but it references the African American heritage of Piqua. So just moving that may not fully encompass the intention of the marker that denotes not only Giles, but the African American history experience in Piqua. So those things are important, but an accommodation in terms of people trying to work together to acknowledge the past and also recognize the import of the input of people within the city being important, so that we simply make an accommodation again, and I advocate the Goodrich Giles and Atomic City Bridge. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Well, any other person would like to speak for or against resolution number PC 18-23? Any further discussion? Okay, well, at this point, I think we could make it seems like we have, Mr. Hamilton is proposing another name, Goodrich Giles and Atomic City Bridge. We don't have to decide on these. So do I have a resolution?
I'll make a resolution to approve the two names presented before us tonight to move forward to the city commission, along with the condition that we also open it up to the public and get as many names and suggestions as we can, and value those on their, not value, but look at those on their merit, and then the city commission can make a decision. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'll second
I
that.
think we should also note who is proposing which one. I think it needs to be known that the diversity committee is proposing this one, and then a citizen or Larry, however you want to word it, so we know where they're coming from.
Neighbor Larry.
Basically, what I would do with your recommendation is deliver a report. I'd say what it is that was discussed. I will also, obviously, before the next city commission session, talk with administration about opening it up to the public to talk about name proposals for the bridge, and obviously make sure that they understand that that is the recommendation of the planning commission, and that's how you'd like to go forward. So that's how we would do it.
Yeah, and they need to adjust the city facility honorary naming policy for this kind of a notice in the future. It's not in the policy.
Right.
So we're here to follow the policies approved by the city commission. Okay. So,
Is that a
Do we
second
have-
then, Shannon?
do we have a second?
Okay.
We have a motion and a second that the planning commission has studied the request, conducted public hearing engagement on the matter, and recommends the following name or names for the bridge to the city commission for consideration. The proposal by the diversity committee for the Atomic City Bridge. I also submitted that. Is that, who gets?
Oh,
Okay.
Stealing credit, huh?
Still, well, no, but that, I actually submitted, I had a lot of information to share, but I look around and everyone knows about it, so I'm not gonna pursue that additionally. What?
Great mind,
Single thought, great mind, single thought. But I think diversity committee would carry more weight, but include my name, if you. And, so I mentioned that for the Atomic City Bridge, and Larry Hamilton, Mr. Hamilton, for the Goodrich Giles and Atomic City Bridge. So, this time, could you poll the commissioners?
Oh, I apologize. Gary Koenig,
Aye.
Shannon Brandon,
Aye.
Brad Bupp,
Aye.
Eddie Harvey,
Aye.
Joe Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, the next, the resolution number PC 18-23 is approved. Now let's move on to Resolution 19-23.
And this is a resolution to recommend a name for the gazebo located on McCullough Square. The proposal that came from the Diversity Committee was the Mills Brothers gazebo. So again, this was, how this comes to me or came to me is the Diversity Committee contacted the city manager. City manager asked that we put this on your plate. So that's where we're at. Now, the Mills Brother gazebo is next to the dedicated monument that was placed there, I think, in the 90s, early 90s, 91 maybe. But the Mills Brothers are former Piqua, they're from Piqua. It's John Jr. I'm not sure everybody really knows their first names. So there's John Jr., Herbert, Harry, and Donald. They were born in the early 1900s. They went on to have a wildly successful career. When they lived in Piqua, one of the houses they lived in happened to be owned by Mr. Goodrich Giles, so it's a fun crossover history there. He was born much earlier. He was born in 1846. These were the next generation of Piqua residents, and again, yeah, they went on to perform at not just Mays Opera House locally and that kind of fame, but to circuit nationally, and they recorded lots and lots of songs and sold millions of records. So most people, I think, know about the Mills Brothers, and those who don't should, because their music is still really good. It's timeless. We listen to it at home as well. So I think it's a great name, but I imagine we're about to get into a discussion about the process again, which is totally fine.
Well, on this one, though, I think, let's hear from the Diversity Committee. Well, any questions from the staff by commissioners? Okay, let's hear. Do you have any information to share in regards to resolution number PC 19-23?
I want to hear Jim do a little glowworm up there while he's got the mic.
You can hope all you want. Jim Oda, 523 Coel, speaking for the Diversity Committee. And I will say, from the Diversity Committee's standpoint, this naming process is terrible. It sends you from over here to over here to over here, and even the city administration isn't clear on exactly where it goes and how it goes. And at one point we were told that the Diversity Committee is making this decision. Oh no, that was sent over to several other groups. So in the future, that would be a really wonderful thing to address, to make that just item 1, item 2, item 3, and item 4. Straightforward, it's not. As far as naming the gazebo, and there is the Mills Brothers little tombstone there. Not maybe the best of all possible markers. You don't see it, you trip over it. But what we're looking at is the two sides of the gazebo, the Mills Brothers gazebo. We cannot definitively prove that they sang from this site. We do know that they sang within a half a block of this site. So it is highly likely that they did move over to the square to sing. So it is a site directly tied to the Mills Brothers. And we're not talking about a huge sign, but just a small sign on the side of the gazebo that dedicates that space to the Mills Brothers. And we think that it is an appropriate thing. It's not a big thing, no, but it's a start. There are a lot of other places that Mills Brothers material should be, but this is our start. And we think that it's an appropriate one and that people will see it. A lot of people go by there, and we're not talking about a huge sign, we're talking about that kind of a sign. But it recognizes their contribution to American music and American history. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from anyone present in regards to resolution number PC 19-23?
Good evening once again. Larry Hamilton, 1104 Maplewood Drive. I hope it doesn't seem like I'm giving myself a lot of pats on the back, but I made a recommendation that the entire square be named for the Mills Brothers back in the 1990s. I felt as if their international notoriety was deserving of that kind of ownership identity. And again, we're talking about the willingness on the part of communities to acknowledge some things about our past and to promote some level of reconciliation or acknowledgement that offers some healing in connection with that past history. It's really unfortunate that we have to have this level of conversation because there was much opportunity back in the 1990s when we had this opportunity to extend some level of prominence worthy of ownership identity to the Mills Brothers. A lot of people are now knowing, have some knowledge of who the Mills Brothers are, that they're Piqua born, but very few people also mention that there was a disconnect with Piqua. And why was that? So we have to be a community that has some will and courage to acknowledge the fact that we've made some mistakes. And some of those mistakes have promoted a level of exclusion. And as I look at the drawing back here, we see that it says building an inclusive, innovative, and collaborative community that propels Piqua forward. Inclusive. When do we become inclusive? Were we inclusive when the Mills Brothers were internationally renowned? I don't think so. Why is it that a lot of people think and make the association with the Mills Brothers in connection with Belle Fountain? Why is that? Maybe we haven't extended to them the level of notoriety that we should have back in the 1930s when they had begun to build that international fame, and that goes on into the 40s and into the 50s and into the 60s. I mean, there are countless records. You know, we can talk about vinyl or just actual records, you know, that these people are responsible for and having come from Piqua, Ohio. Yeah, I really think that we've, you know, taken a minimalist approach to giving some recognition to the gazebo. Okay? I think we ought to have, some consideration in terms of the entirety of 25A. That's another governance, but if we wanted to do what was proper and appropriate and inclusive of our historical heritage, we could take, the action in terms of having a dual name recognition for Main Street Piqua. Main Street Piqua is going to honor and recognize and extend some level of ownership identity to the Mills brothers. What's wrong with that? We don't change the name. It's Main Street.
That's what the honorary naming policy allows. Have you seen this?
I introduced one
Introduced
of
it,
those,
okay, well then you wrote it, I guess.
resolutions back in 2007.
This was just in the last month.
Yeah. And then, of course, several years later, unbeknownst to the public and moi, the commission changed everything. Okay? So that's another example of what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a cabal. I'm going to say that. We're dealing with people who think that they have a controlling interest on what is a public, community-wide voice. And that leadership of that cabal then basically has some level of control or influence, we'll say, of the powers that be in that governing process. So here's another one of the examples that I, advocate. This was sent to me by Chris Good, who lives out in California. And Chris came up with this mural on the square. That's big enough, that's bold enough, that's prominent enough for the fame, the international acclaim. It's Piqua's, says Piqua's internationally acclaimed. The Mills Brothers, over 3 dozen gold records. Hollywood, over 50 million records sold. First black artist with a national radio show. Over 2,000 recordings.
Certainly, let's go back to resolution number PC 19-23. Great idea. Not the forum. Certainly can be submitted. Great idea. Like it. I think it should start with the diversity committee. I don't know if you've got with them first about that, but that idea, I don't know what building you're talking about, but the owner of the building would have to agree.
The building is, a corporate building, so it would require some level of lobbying, I guess.
Well,
with
the
Piqua,
corporation would have to.
the Fifth Third
The
National
Fifth Third
Bank.
building?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
I guess the question is, are you in favor of what we're voting on? That's what
For
we
or
need.
against
Yeah, or
resolution
against.
PC
That's the
19-23?
question I have.
I'm against it.
Okay,
Okay, that's what I didn't know.
Yeah.
against.
You would
You
like to see the full square, at least the full square.
That was my initial recommendation.
Why did that die, Mr. Hamilton? Why did that not go anywhere?
Because some members of the commission were misleading the public in connection with a renaming of the square. So people had the idea that somebody was going to be taken off the ownership identity of the square when that wasn't the case. But it was promoted by commissioners that there was a renaming of the square instead of a authorizing resolution to name the square.
So there's still no name for the square.
McCullough.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
McCullough.
when did that-
McCullough,
But when
he's
did
a
that happen?
famous congressman,
No, I know who it is.
civil rights leader.
When
He's-
did it happen?
Years ago.
Yeah, so it
He-
happened.
he's a
it-
outstanding
It happened,
Republican leadership.
around 10 years ago or so. So much later, after the recommendation that we named the square for the Mills Brothers, 20 years later, when people don't have any, public historical memory, that it was being promoted to name the square after the Mills Brothers 20 years ago. And then we have a Mills Brothers scholarship.
Okay.
And that, becomes diluted in terms of, well, we're going to attach to the Mills Brothers scholarship the Mills Brothers Bogart, scholarship. And so what could have and should have been something that was prominently set aside or acknowledged in a way of, past exclusion could have been acknowledged and promoted in a more inclusive manner.
Okay, we're in 2023.
Okay.
Do,
And you say that to say what?
Well, we can't change all that. We're just dealing with resolution number PC 19-23.
This isn't about change, it's about acknowledgement. So if you are willing to acknowledge some things that we didn't do right in the past, we might be doing better in the future.
say, okay, Larry, you and I go back pretty good ways, and hopefully we have mutual respect. Would you agree with Mr. Oda, though, can't we agree with Mr. Oda, though, that that's a good start? At least naming something after the Mills Brothers on the square?
No. Because
I mean, you'd
again,
rather have it not
here-
named than to have it named?
No, I would rather have other proposals considered. One I gave you, and that was also a proposal I made in the 1990s, that a street be identified and named, actually I promoted Ash Street, the entryway into Piqua, being named the Mills Brothers Parkway or Mills Brothers Way or something to that extent. That wasn't,
So you're saying you would like to see the gazebo, because that's what's in front of us. That's what we as the commission have been given to do. But would you like to see that being opened up more to more than just the Mills Brothers gazebo? You're saying, let's open it up for more, not nominations, but more ideas.
yeah. I'm saying that the gazebo is a go low minimalist approach.
That's all we're doing tonight.
Okay, well.
You can
and
pursue this,
I think
continue to
you're
pursue.
asking if
the-
there are people who are opposed, and I'm opposed to the gazebo.
You're opposed to it. Okay,
And
very good.
I also want to make mention that there are other proposals that are more
That-
valuing of
And
the,
the city facility
and a-
honorary naming policy supports that process, and I would encourage you to pursue that because it likely could happen. I don't know, but
So I think though, we can approve this as a name, just like we
Right.
did the other one.
right.
And say, we want to open it up just like we did the other one.
The only thing on this one is it wasn't, in my mind, there needs to be more public notice because it was put in.
Which is what we did with the
We
other one.
need,
That's my
we need
point
more
about
public
all this
notice.
naming
Yeah.
stuff. There needs to be more public
More
notice.
public notice on this particular one before it goes to commission,
Well, your
okay?
idea of revising that is probably the best idea I've heard
And the,
for everybody.
Mr.
here.
Hamilton's idea of the, designated, Main Street and then an honor naming something else, that is certainly supported
I
by
actually
this.
love the idea of Mills Brothers Way.
Well, I think it's.
I think it's
it has a
awesome.
good, yeah. But I like McCullough Square because he's a great statesman and responsible for
Right.
outstanding legislative priorities.
Hey,
So-
I ain't trying to be mad at McCulloch. The name of my place is the Randolph and McCulloch Freedom Struggle Complex, okay? So I know the
The history of
value and
McCulloch.
importance of,
Congressman McCulloch. Yes, a
of William
super
Moore
guy.
McCulloch.
Okay,
Thank you.
super. Thanks, sir.
I mean, I just want to add, I can understand as far as this process goes, it focuses on a spot, something that we're naming, and then it generates names for that thing. And what we just did with the bridge was we said, well, look, there's already this park. It's named Goodrich Giles Park. And then we said the bridge, that'd be redundant. So I do understand the concern that if you name something and then you say, well, should we name a street Mills Brothers Parkway? And somebody goes, well, we already named the gazebo for the Mills Brothers. Why don't we pick another name? You could see how somebody could be worried that would be
That
what
you're
would
going
happen
too low
next.
on that. Yeah,
Correct.
I see
So-
what
I
you're saying.
understand what he's saying.
Yeah, yeah, so
Okay,
I'm just
so-
acknowledging that I think is, I can understand that is a difficulty here, and I think it would be fantastic to have, first of all, Main Street, personally, I think I've talked with Larry about this, and there's pros and cons here, because this is not the prettiest entrance to the city by any means. It's, we want to find somewhere that is deserving of the name, but I've always, as a newcomer to Piqua, always thought that 25A is the most confusing name for a road ever, because it's North County Road 25A, but you might be thinking of the south side of the city, and I just don't know what people are talking about when they're telling me if it's on North County Road 25A. I think of one or the other, I just make an assumption. It deserves probably an actual name rather than a number.
Well, but neither gateways are very good. I
Yeah,
like the
right.
Ash Street one
Exactly.
a
Well,
lot
true.
better, actually,
Yeah.
than that.
Yeah.
But that's beside the point. Let's
Yep.
get on with this.
Okay, well, so let's move on. Any more discussion on resolution number PC 19-23? Hearing none, do I have a motion on resolution number PC-19-23?
I'll make a motion to approve 19-23 with the exception that we, as well as the previous motion, that we open this up to more ideas. We present this one as a idea, that's legitimate, but we open it up to some more ideas, and maybe there'll be something better that we can present to the city commission.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, a second on resolution number PC 19-23. Whereas the Planning Commission has studied the request, conducted a public hearing and engagement on the matter, and recommends the following name or names for this, well, I
Oh,
got the
I
wrong one.
apologize for this gazebo.
Gazebo to the City Commission for consideration and adoption. The Mills Brothers gazebo. At this time, could you poll the commission?
Gary Koenig,
Nay.
Shannon Brandon,
Aye.
Brad Bupp,
Aye.
Eddie Harvey,
Aye.
Joe Wilson.
Aye.
Resolution number PC 19-23 is passed. That's the end of our agenda. Are there any other information you'd like to share with the commission?
No, not at this time.
Okay, then, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. And resolution PC 1923 was passed. I should have said that.
Yep.